Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming today and those who are virtual. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Planning and Stakeholders Relation Committee. Roll call. Members of this committee, could you please identify yourselves?
Tom Bergender.
Other board members, could you please identify yourselves?
Joe Totten.
Jen Liptak.
Lori Mizgorski.
Tia McClinney.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes. The minutes from July's meeting for this committee has been circulated. Unless anyone have any questions or corrections, I would like to ask for a motion to approve these minutes. Motion,
So moved.
second.
Second.
Any discussions? All in favor, please say yay.
Yes.
Aye.
Resolutions, we have one resolution that will be presented to the committee today. Authorization to extend and amend agreements for general planning services. Derek Dolphin will present or make the presentation.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Board Committee, for your time. My name is Derek Dolphin. I'm the Director of Planning and Service Development here at PRT. As some of you may remember, about 1 year ago, we were here to expand our not to exceed value for our contract for the final year of that original term, which was 3 years. At the time, we said we'd have to come back in a year, basically, to utilize the first year of the option year on the contract. So that's what we're here to do. We also need to fund that or expand the not to exceed for that option year. So you'll see in the resolution that the new end date for the contract would be October 31st, 2025. It's currently 2024. And then we'd be adding 1.63 million to the not to exceed value to cover this additional year of work. This work, just to be clear, is already fully funded through our budget and through grant funds. This is just expanding the not to exceed so we can utilize those funds. This extra year will allow us to do a lot of things. So we have a project that you're going to hear about next, bus line redesign, that will allow us to finish. It will also allow us to work on TOD initiatives, transit development initiatives. We have a number of station accessibility projects on the red line that this will help us to start. And then our facilities master plan. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. But otherwise, I respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Does any board members have any questions concerning this item?
Stephanie, we want to call for a vote to move this to the full board.
Can I get a motion?
Yes, ask for a motion.
May I have a motion to move?
Motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have the bus line redesign update by Emily Provencha.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Provencha, and thanks for your time. I'm the manager of service development at PRT. Over the past year, PRT has been studying a system-wide redesign of our bus network, focusing on better leveraging PRT's resources to better match transit demand while prioritizing equity. And we have a draft called the Bus Network Redesign, Draft Network 1.0, to share with stakeholders and the public. We know that the need for transit is much larger than what we're able to deliver, and we've gotten years of service requests and thousands of comments throughout this planning process so far that speak to a huge desire for more transit service in our region. And we've tried to respond to this by creating a menu that shows what could be done with more funding and operators. And we're calling that the plus 20% proposal. So I'll go into the draft network 1.0, and I'll also touch on the plus 20 proposal. So I'll start with a little overview of the project and timeline. Then I'll give an overview of the draft network 1.0. before discussing the menu of options, the plus 20 proposal. We'll also spend some time on our public engagement strategy, which we plan to launch on September 30th and continue through the end of the year. And then I'll wrap up with some next steps for the planning project and strategic implementation. So the project overview, we focused on 3 goals. So we approached the redesigning the bus network by updating routes to improve reliability and better reflect where riders want to go. We prioritized equitable investment and expanding connections throughout the county. And a series of metrics were established to ensure that the draft network developed met each project goal. And our public engagement strategy will inform the public how the draft network supports the project goals, and it will gather input on the draft network and how it could turn into a proposal, a second draft. Okay, so focusing on a more efficient network and better utilizing PRT's resources, better meeting riders' current needs of where they want to go, responding to a very high demand for transit in our region, and offering a menu of options if we are able to expand in the future. And the project timeline. So we started the project publicly last fall by conducting a detailed existing conditions analysis of our system, looking at hundreds of service requests collected over the past decade, and asking the public what they wanted us to achieve. And then over the winter and spring, we studied this input and started network development planning. And now we have a draft. Over the fall and winter, we're going to share this draft with the public and stakeholders, and then use the feedback to refine the draft, as I said, and the next proposal, the second draft, will be bringing to the public next spring. Okay, so now I'll just give a really brief overview of the draft network 1.0, which is really hard to do because there's so many amazing things that we're trying to do, and it's kind of impossible to distill in a minute, but we are proposing networks that allow riders to move between communities without the need to transfer downtown. So we're trying to establish a lot more interconnectivity between routes throughout the system. We are very intentionally creating connections that provide riders with one-seat rides to Oakland for healthcare, education, jobs, and cultural activities. And there is still excellent one-seat ride service to downtown. Some of the routes with longer running times that are more prone to delay, we're shortening those or splitting them in 2 so that they will have better reliability and on-time performance. And we're proposing a broader system of transit hubs throughout the county, and that will facilitate the interconnectivity between routes that I spoke about. We've taken great care to ensure that routes are better serving to access jobs, health facilities, and grocery stores and shopping centers. There's increased service proposed throughout the day and weekends. This was accomplished by scaling back some of the commuter flyer services whose ridership remains pretty low after the pandemic shifted many workers to remote work. So reallocating those service hours throughout the day and weekends, and that favors transit-dependent riders. Route frequencies are proposed at more consistent intervals. So routes would be every 15, every 20, every 30, 40, or 60. That just makes it more easy for our riders to understand when their buses are coming. And finally, all routes that are using the busways, we're proposing those would make all stops along the busways. And that reduces rider confusion about why buses would pass without stopping to pick riders up that are waiting at those stations. So that's a little bit of an overview. This is what our draft network 1.0 looks like. We'll be taking this to the public very shortly. There will be a website where the public can zoom in and look at very granular detail, kind of turn by turn, where are you proposing my route? And they can add feedback directly onto this map. So as I said, routes are much more direct, efficient, reliable. We've found ways to reduce the total number of routes, but also maintain almost the exact same coverage that we have today with more frequent service. As I said, new one-seat ride connections all throughout the county, especially to Oakland, new crosstown routes that better connect neighborhoods. We're including a few microtransit zones in this proposal. Those are the red shaded areas on the map. So we tried to identify where microtransit would most make sense. Those microtransit zones would provide 7-day-a-week service for all zones. There are a few other elements of the proposal that I don't have time to go into right now, but happy to take questions after this meeting, such as weaving in. Some other elements that we'll weave into this are, where possible, bus stop balancing along new routes, existing routes, and revising the route naming classification to better communicate to riders where the routes primarily serve. So the key takeaways from the draft network 1.0. So as I said, we're evaluating the network based on our 3 goals, and many of the routing, frequency, and service band improvements are intentionally focused on equity neighborhoods within PRT's service area and just better connecting riders to access the system. Key metrics from the network evaluation. So this slide is a lot to take in, but what these stats show upon our evaluation of the draft network 1.0 is that we have made significant progress on our goals. So we're increasing the number of routes that operate at 30-minute or better intervals from only 25 routes in our system today to 43 routes in our system that would perform at 30-minute or better frequencies. And over 400,000 residents would have access to that 30-minute or better service. So that's a 27% improvement in our system. And I said we're prioritizing equity. So some statistics of our network evaluation is that equity communities would have, 143,000 residents of equity communities would have access to 30-minute or better service. That's a 32% improvement throughout our system, and nearly 340,000 job sites would have access to 30-minute or better service. So that's an improvement of nearly 35,000 job sites. And in terms of better connecting communities overall, over 605,000 residents would have access to transit, which is an improvement of 35,000 people. And many more people would have one-seat rides to Oakland. And as I said, we're still maintaining existing coverage of the system. So 99.4% of our current PRT riders would still have access to the system within a quarter mile of their home. Okay, so I said we have kind of parked a few dream scenario ideas into a plus 20% proposal. So these are things that if we had additional funding, if we had additional operators, we would like to prioritize service expansion in these areas. So we would like to focus on expanding 20-minute or better service throughout the system. And for those routes that we aren't able to support 20-minute or better service, we'd like to still improve the service frequencies of those 30, 40, and 60-minute services. So again, if we had more funding, we would really focus on frequencies. We would want to expand additional routes to the airport from all quadrants of the county. And we would like to, if microtransit is a success, and we've evaluated that, we would consider expanding that microtransit service throughout the county. So adding up all the plus 20 expansion proposals, it would be about, as I said, 20% more additional funding needed from the $405 million that the draft network 1.0 is based on. It would be an additional $75 million that we would need. So now I'll talk about the public engagement of the draft network 1.0. So we have a full calendar of planned events, pop-ups, briefings with county and local government stakeholders. We met with Committee for Accessible Transit last night. And we hope to publicly launch on September 30th and, publish the website, publish the interactive map where the public can provide input. We'll do a series of pop-ups and stakeholder meetings all throughout the end of the year. And here is a little bit of a schedule of what we'll be doing this fall and winter. And as I said, after we gather all of the public input from this fall and winter, we go back to the drawing board, make further revisions to the network. And next spring, we hope to bring to the public a second draft. Okay, in terms of next steps, so I said next spring, PRT would plan to come back to the public and our stakeholders with a second draft. And then we would hope to have a final network sometime in 2025, later in 2025, so that we can begin to plan for how PRT would implement this. If there are any early wins we could do or low-hanging fruit that could potentially be in a phase 1 of implementation. But once we get buy-in on the final network, then we would bring that back to the PRT board for review, and we would begin planning for multiple phases of implementation. So if you have any questions,
Any
that's the end.
questions from board members?
I have a question, and Mike may be able to give this to me afterwards, but could I get a copy of, it said at the bottom when it was talking about the equity communities, that was defined by something in the PRT booklet. It was a little difficult to read, but it was like a footnote at the bottom, and I was wondering where I could access that.
Sure. Sorry, that was PRT's 2019 Index of Mobility Need. So we could share that with you.
Okay, thank you.
And
No
Board Member
problem.
McClellan, this is Catherine. Crossing a street, so it's noisy, I apologize, but our planning team, we'll definitely get this out to all the members. Our planning team has spent an awful lot of time expanding the Pittsburgh definition of equity beyond what is standard within transit, which is usually looking at age and ethnic demographic, and including factors such as percentage of households headed up by single parents who are women. There's a whole bunch of different additional factors in there that have helped us have a more robust picture of where we're putting out service. I'm very, very proud of the work, and we'll get that out to all members. Thank you for the question.
I have a question. This is Bobby Fan. On the microtransit part of the proposal, what are the requirements for the potential operators for these microtransit zones, and what does PRT anticipate the ridership served and cost per passenger with that?
Board Member Tran,
Step in on the microtransit.
Oh, Amy, you've got this. I'll jump off. You've got it.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. So microtransit is being incorporated into this project, but it is actually also a separate project that we do have some grant funding to start a pilot for. So we have a separate team who will be meeting to begin planning for that pilot. And so there's a lot of questions around microtransit that we don't have answers to today. So we've asked the bus line redesign team to plan for the potential that microtransit is implemented and that we do find it to be successful. But right now we're more in an information gathering phase, talking to other transit agencies who've done microtransit to learn some of the best practices or lessons learned that they have. And we really haven't robustly done any implementation planning internally yet. So it will follow as a separate program and project that we will make sure we speak to both the board and the broader public about, and it will continue to sit in bus line redesign. And we hope that the timeline for microtransit will work out well with the program for bus line redesign. If it doesn't, or if it isn't ready yet by the time bus line redesign is ready to be implemented, we will and do have plans in bus line redesign to make sure that we can phase the implementation of bus routings to be reactive to what we have going on with micro. So we don't have a lot of great answers on microtransit quite yet, but we hope to soon, certainly over the course of this year.
Does any other board members have any questions or concerns? Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
I actually just have one more question, which may have been answered within the presentation. My apologies if that is the case, but is there an estimate around the network's overall impact on the number of transfers that riders would need to take, and both in terms of the percentage of riders overall and transfers per rider?
Yes, we've done a number of seat analysis. So we're calling it the one seat ride analysis. And from neighborhood to neighborhood and any destination that a rider would want to go, we can share how many seat ride it would be, whether it would require a transfer or not. Right now, we don't have a holistic percentage, but we do have a very large spreadsheet analysis that shows every single possibility and how many seat rides it would take to get there.
Yeah, I didn't, expect a magic statistic if to be pulled out of your pocket, but was just curious if there's a sense of overall, if there's greater number of transfers, fewer number of transfers relative to the system as it currently is.
I think overall, one highlight of the new system is that there are a lot of new one-seat rides that riders are not able to go to these places in a one-seat ride today. So we're better connecting neighborhoods in a way that our current system doesn't do. But we can give you more information on that. And that's a really good point as we're leading into public engagement to have that at the ready.
Any other questions from board members? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
I have a question.
Oh, please come back.
Sorry. Yeah,
No
thank
problem.
you. Yeah, specifically,
Is this a board,
Yeah.
is this the board? Yes. Could you identify yourself, please? Could you please identify yourself? No further questions. Thank you.
We'll try to determine who was asking that question. And if it was a board member, we can follow up after the meeting to answer their question.
Thank you, Sandy.
All right, thank you.
Mhm. That is the end of the agenda for this committee today. I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I would like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee. Other members of the Finance Committee, could you please identify yourselves? Who else here? Nobody?
Go through the names.
Okay. Members of the Finance Committee include myself, Emma Schuker, Jennifer Liptak, Joe Totten, and Representative Nick Piscatano.
If any
Oh,
of
I'm sorry,
those
I'm
people.
here. I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay,
I'm Jen's here.
great.
Other board members, could you please identify yourselves?
Tom
Tia.
Burgunder.
Tia McClinney.
Lori
Stephanie
Mizgorski.
Jarman.
Bobby Fan.
The minutes from the July meeting of this committee have been circulated. Unless anyone has questions or corrections, I'll ask for a motion to approve those minutes. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. We have no proposed resolutions to be presented from the Finance Committee today. We will now have a review of the July and August 2024 financial statements by Dominica Brown. Could you kindly provide that review?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, Madam Chair and other committee and board members. My name is Dominica Brown. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at PRT. So our first slide shows the passenger revenue trends for July and August of this current year. We did see a dip in passenger revenues in July, and that was due to lower monthly and fare purchases. But in August, it did climb back up to closer to what we would expect revenues to be. Our financial results for the month of July, fiscal year 2025, has a result of about $300,000 fewer fares than budgeted. And that's given the reason that I explained earlier. Access is on budget. Interest income is about $200,000 higher than the budgeted amount. And we have other. So the total variance in revenue is about $200,000 below our budgeted amount. For the expenses for the month of July, we are about $5.7 million higher. I'm sorry, lower than budgeted. Wages and benefits were pretty much on the nose. However, purchase services were fewer and all other expenses were fewer as well. For subsidies in the month of July, we're about $700,000 higher than budgeted, and that is due to higher state operating assistance. When we look at the month of August for revenues, we have about $200,000 less revenues than budgeted. Again, that is due to lower fares. Interest income is higher than budgeted. For expenses in the month of August, we have about $2.2 million fewer expenses than budgeted, and that is due to lower purchase services primarily and lower all other expenses. For subsidies in the month of August, we have about $8.2 million higher invoice subsidies than budgeted, and again, that is due to higher state operating assistance and increased invoicing and capitalizations. For our August year-to-date financial results, our revenue is about $400,000 lower than budgeted. Expenses are $800,000 higher than budgeted. I'm sorry, lower than budgeted, and which is a good thing, but that is due again to all other and purchase services being lower than our budgeted amounts. And for our subsidies, we're at about $8.9 million higher, again, because of higher state operating assistance and capitalizations. For our operating reserves, PRT began in the month of August with $348.8 million in operating reserves. There were cash inflows of $23.1 million. 11.3 of that is state operating assistance. And our cash outflows during the month were $43.9 million. The month of August was ended with $328 million in operating reserves. At the end of the month of August, we still do have $10.2 million remaining in our CRISA funds. Those are the federal stimulus funds that we received during the pandemic, but those are expected to be expended likely within the next month. And that is the end of the Finance Committee, or my financial report. Are there any questions?
Questions from board members? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
That is the end of the short agenda today for the Finance Committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Representative Pisatano. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Performance and Oversight Committee. Other members of this committee, could you please identify yourselves?
Tia McClinney.
Lori Mizgorski.
Other
Bobby
members of
Fan.
the board, can you please identify yourselves?
Bobby Fan.
Stephanie Terman.
Tom Bergender.
Emma Shuker.
Jen Liptak.
Thank you. The minutes from the July meeting of this committee have been circulated. Unless anyone has any questions or corrections, I'll ask for a motion to approve these minutes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Representative Piscatano, are you still with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we
Sorry,
lost
technical
your audio
difficulties
for a
this
second.
morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no
All in
problem.
favor for approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? The motion carries. The first proposed resolution on our agenda today is the awarding of bids. The first resolution, or Mr. Devlin, could you please report this resolution?
Yes, good morning and thank you. We have 9 bids for your consideration here this morning. The first one is B 240762A for asbestos-free break blocks. This was publicly advertised and e-business documents were distributed. 252 suppliers were notified of this bid, 2 suppliers accepted, and 2 bids were received. This is to furnish and deliver asbestos-free brake blocks, which are assembled on shoes, and they're utilized in the maintenance of our bus fleet for over a 2-year period with no renewal options available. Our recommendation is that a contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Fraser Gage Company, in the estimated amount of $425,160. I will note that this pricing represents a 20% increase over the previous contract for these same products 2 years ago. Our staff has determined the pricing is fair and reasonable and is consistent with the funds budgeted. Our second one is actually a revenue contract for waste oil removal services. Solicitation REV 240760A is to be awarded to the highest bidder, and it was publicly advertised to 424 suppliers. 3 suppliers accepted the invitation and 2 bids were received. They remove waste oils removed from our vehicles and our equipment, which is stored in underground storage tanks at various facilities. This is a 2-year contract with no renewal options available. Our recommendation is the contract be awarded to the highest responsive and responsible bidder, which is Ernie's Waste Oil, in the estimated amount of $33,600. This pricing represents actually a 40% increase over the previous contract for these products 2 years ago. Staff has determined the pricing to be fair and reasonable and, again, consistent with the funds budget as a revenue generator. I will pause here for any questions on those 2 bids. Bid
Any
number
questions
3.
from the board?
Thank you. Bid number 3 is for bus manufacturing inspection oversight services. This solicitation is numbered B 240768A. Again, publicly advertised and the business documents were distributed. 1,033 suppliers notified. 1 supplier accepted the invite and responded with a bid. This is to perform on-site manufacturing and pre-delivery vehicle inspections of our new bus fleet at the New Flyer bus manufacturing facility over a 1-year period. No renewal options available. In accordance with our usual procurement policies and procedures, a single bid survey was conducted. Staff did not receive any reasons or responses to indicate that the specification was restrictive. So our recommendation is that a contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, which is Southeast Transit Services LLC, in the estimated amount of $283,871.90. I will note that a comparison to the previous contract could not be made, as the number of bus builds is actually very small, significantly less than the previous contract, and the manufacturing plant location for this solicitation is in a different geographical region, which seriously affects the travel costs, travel expenses factored into the bid pricing. With that said, staff has determined the pricing is fair and reasonable and is consistent with the funds budgeted. Sorry, I forgot to click next. Cheryl's giving me the look. I know, it's my bad. The next one, railroad cross ties. Solicitation B 240763, publicly advertised, and again, e-business documents distributed to 778 suppliers being notified. 5 suppliers accepted the invite and 5 bids were received. This is to furnish and deliver timber cross ties, which are utilized by our way department in the maintenance of the light rail vehicle infrastructure. This is for a 240-day period and no renewal options available. This solicitation was issued as a line item award with 2 different line items. I will note one bidder was found to be non-responsive in accordance with specific specifications as advertised. So our recommendation is that this contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidders as follows. Line item 1, Stella Jones Corporation, estimated amount of $28,650. A&K Railroad Materials, line item 2, estimated amount of $130,845. For line item 1, this is a pricing represents a 3% increase, and for line item 2, a 9% increase over the previous contract prices 2 years ago. Again, staff has determined the price to be fair and reasonable and consistent with the funds budgeted. I will pause for any questions. And I will click next, Cheryl. Next up, differential gear lubricant, solicitation B 24764A. Publicly advertised e-business documents were distributed. We had 282 suppliers notified, 5 suppliers accepting the invitation, and 3 bids received. This is to furnish and deliver differential gear lubricant utilized in the maintenance of our bus fleet, highway vehicles, and light rail vehicles. It's for a 2-year period with no renewal options available. 2 bidders were found to be non-responsive in accordance with the specifications as advertised. Our recommendation is that a contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, PPC Lubricants, in the estimated amount of $129,869.82. This is a 1% increase over the previous contract prices for these products, which was 1 year ago. Again, staff has determined the pricing to be fair and reasonable and consistent with the funds budgeted. Moving on to graphic film and pre-masking tape. Solicitation B 240766A. Again, publicly advertised with e-business documents distributed. We had 356 suppliers notified, 2 suppliers accepting the invitation, and 2 bids received. This is to furnish and deliver graphic film and pre-masking tape, which is utilized in the installation of exterior styling schemes on our vehicles for a 2-year period with no renewal options. I will note one bidder was found to be non-responsive in accordance with the specs as advertised. So our recommendation is a contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Grimco Incorporated, estimated amount $134,657.35. This pricing does represent a 26% increase over the previous contract for these products, which was 2 years ago. Again, staff has determined pricing to be fair and reasonable and consistent with the funds budgeted. Again, a moment pause for any questions. Number 7, Ford F-150 trucks. This is actually on a CoStar state schedule. The Commonwealth Pennsylvania Department of General Services Cooperative Purchasing Program, otherwise known as CoStars, has awarded a contract for municipal work vehicles to Whitmore Ford Incorporated. PRT wishes to make a purchase under the terms and conditions of the respective state schedule. PRT wishes to purchase 8 2023 Ford F-150 trucks, which are already outfitted with safety lighting and bed covers, which is under the terms and conditions of the contract, which is number 025 E23607 municipal work vehicles. So this is for Whitmore Ford Incorporated, estimated amount of $364,000. And of course, staff has determined the pricing to be fair and reasonable on the Pennsylvania state schedule and consistent with the funds budgeted. Number 8, Caterpillar mini excavator, again on the CoStar state schedule with Commonwealth Pennsylvania Department of General Services. This is on construction heavy duty type power equipment. This one is with Cleveland Brothers Equipment under contract number 44000282102. And PRT wishes to purchase 1 new Caterpillar mini excavator under the terms and conditions of the respective contract, which this equipment will be utilized by the Trackway Department in the maintenance of the light rail vehicle system. Staff has determined the pricing on this state schedule to be fair and reasonable and consistent with the funds budgeted. Momentary pause for questions. Thank you. One more, Icon M units overhaul. The board has authorized previously a sole source contract to Bombardier Transportation Through the course of this project, Bombardier, I am just going to fudge it, so I won't say it any further. They've encountered anticipated delays. We are requesting an increase in the total not to exceed in the amount of $90,930 and to extend this contract to November 30th, 2025. With this said, the total contract amount would, the NTE would be $4,637,676. And as per normal, staff has determined price to be fair and reasonable, consistent with the funds budgeted. Subject to any questions from the board, I would respectfully request that this resolution be taken to the full board for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any board member have questions for Mr. Devlin? Hearing none, may I have a motion to advance this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. The next resolution is a request for authorization to extend and amend agreements with a pool of firms to provide general marketing services. Jim Ritchie, could you kindly present this resolution?
Good morning and thank you. I am Jim Ritchie, the Chief Communications Officer for PRT. And this is our general marketing services contract, which covers a wide range of categories and provides services that really benefit all of the divisions at PRT that make use of our different marketing and creative services group. The advertising, marketing, and promotion category, public relations, community outreach and engagement, market research, direct mail distribution, and video production. Next slide, please. And so this morning, we are coming back seeking an extension of the first and only option year on this agreement. It was first approved in October of 2020 for an initial 4-year term. And the not to exceed amount for all of the agreements combined was $5,650,000. And so our request today is that we advance this to the full board for approval and that we do not increase the not to exceed amount, but to extend and exercise that first and only option year on the agreements.
Thank you. Does any board member have any questions for Mr. Ritchie?
How much money has been spent so far under this arrangement?
Sure. We have out of the 5.65 million originally approved, we still have 3.5 million remaining on the agreement. And if you look at the time period, of course, that goes back into the COVID years. So that really shut down a lot of things that we had been planning at that time and had anticipated spending more money out of these agreements. So we have plenty of money to get through the additional option year.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion to advance this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
May I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. The final resolution is a request for authorization to enter into agreements to provide legislative consulting services. Mr. Ritchie, can you kindly present this resolution?
Yes, thank you. This is our agreements for our legislative consulting services. This is the result of an RFP process that we first advertised in April, and a selection committee identified 3 consultants as having the highest rated proposals to handle this work for us. And if you're not familiar with these agreements, PRT does contract with legislative consulting businesses to help represent its interests at the federal, state, and local levels. They work most directly with the CEO directly and with our government relations team. Some of you may know Melissa Gertie and Kurt Conrad in my group, and they work very directly. As a matter of fact, that's where they're today, and on a week-long trip to Harrisburg and DC. And as our current agreements are expiring, we are requesting that we pursue a new agreement as a result of the RFP with Summit Strategies Government Affairs for our federal work, and at the state and local level with Greenlee Partners LLC and Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney PC. Next slide, please. This agreement would have a not to exceed amount of $1,203,226.27 for all three consultants over an initial 3-year term. And the resolution also would authorize PRT to extend the term for up to an additional 2 1-year periods after that. And I request we move this on to the full board for consideration.
Jim, I have a couple questions. Why do you have two different organizations handling state representation?
Over the years, we've found that having more than one firm at the state level especially has been helpful. And I've been here 15 years, so I can go back to the Act 89 era and tell you that different firms have different types of expertise, and they get you into different audiences in Harrisburg and elsewhere in the state with different types of organizations, different political parties, and that tends to be beneficial. A quick example is, I think it's well known that Greenlee has historically had very strong relationships in the Republican Party across the state of Pennsylvania. And during our talks in Act 89, that became extremely beneficial for mass transit as a whole and for our organization because some of that legislation had developed on that side of the aisle. And it was imperative that we be a part of that. So I think we found over the years that having one doesn't quite arm us with enough of the tools that we need to do our jobs well. And it's really up to our organization to protect our interests. We can't rely on other people to do that for us. We need to be actively participating in these processes, and having enough tools gives us the ability to do that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Thomas.
Are there any other questions from members of the board?
Over the period of years, how many times have we extended and limited to the 3 firms?
Oh,
Extended the agreement.
Yeah.
Limited and not opened up the process.
I would have to give you an exact answer. I think I'd have to go back and check the records. I'm generally though, I think we've typically extended with the firms that have been operating under the initial agreement. That's been typical for us. The number of firms that we have also has been typical. However, I would say I think in our last agreement, the federal work was also done by Buchanan Ingersoll. So, and what's happened over time is they've had some changes in their business, and so they did not get that federal work this time, and we're going with a business that does have that expertise in place. However, we had Buchanan working both on state and federal at that time. So it's roughly the same amount of people participating. It might just be one firm had a federal arm and a state arm, and then Greenlee is state only. So this has been the structure for us going back to Act 89, actually.
No, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, sorry.
If I could just add, yeah, historically, legislative consulting services have followed our standard professional services terms of a primary 3-year term with 2 option years. And this latest solicitation is structured the same way.
Same way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion to advance this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
May I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the presentation of audit of fiscal year 2024 annual physical inventory by Sean McGarren.
Good morning, members of the Performance Oversight Committee, board members, and others in attendance and online. I'm Sean McGurn of the PRT Internal Audit Department, and this morning I'm presenting the results of the internal controls audit for the fiscal year 2024 annual physical inventory. Before I discuss the audit and its results, I wanted to provide a brief overview for our new board members of the Inventory Operations Department. So this department maintains the stock of materials, parts, and supplies at various PRT locations, storerooms, and parts rooms to support PRT operations. Their responsibilities include the movement, delivery, and receipt of the items between the PRT locations and also orders from outside vendors. They use the PeopleSoft system to record these receipts and movements, and they also can use the system to verify item quantities and bin locations at specific PRT divisions. Some of the positions that are responsible for this would include receivers, stock persons, material delivery persons, storeroom supervisors, and stores department manager of inventory and the assistant manager of inventory. Internal audit's objectives for this audit were to determine the adequacy of internal controls, determine if inventory items are accurately counted, determine if variances were resolved and adjustments were properly recorded in PeopleSoft, and to determine if the cutoff process was properly followed for requisitions and receipts issued both before and after the physical inventory procedures. The scope of the audit was FY 2024 inventory. The detailed audit methodology can be found in the full audit report. Internal audit conducted the performance audit in accordance with generally accepted government auditing standards. Related to what procedures that we performed, we observed PRT employees as they counted the inventory items. We statistically sampled and tested inventory counts and the cutoff process at Manchester, South Hills Village, South Hills Junction, and the auto shop locations. In addition to these 4 locations, and at Collier and East Liberty, we judgmentally tested the accuracy of on-hand quantities recorded by the employees conducting the physical inventory by independently counting a sample of inventory items and then comparing our counts with the counts recorded on the count sheets. We also assisted in resolving variances.
Thank you.
In our opinion, in general, the internal controls associated with PRT's FY 2024 annual physical inventory at Manchester, South Hills Village, South Hills Junction, Auto Shop, Collier, and East Liberty Garage locations are effective, and the processes are generally adequate. Related to test results that we did, based on a statistical sampling of 328 items tested, factoring in a margin of error of plus or minus 5%, we are 95% confident that the true accuracy rate of item counts in the population is between 84 and 94%. We judgmentally selected and counted 400 inventory items, which resulted in an accuracy rate of 94%. Finally, we tested 80 requisitions and receipts and determined that the cutoff instructions were followed for 100% of those reviewed. Some strengths that we noted during the inventory, physical inventory process. First, related to cutoff processes, they were very well controlled. Second, for items that had more than one bin location, prior to the start of the annual physical inventory, the manager of purchasing materials worked with the manager of inventory operations and distribution to review and resolve these items. And third, related to overflow stock notices, these were effectively used and placed for overflow stock items. Related to the current audit, we are pleased to note that the audit results were positive and there were no observations or advisory comments. Our auditing standards require us to follow up on prior audit recommendations, and we note that all prior audit recommendations have been closed. In closing, we would like to acknowledge Justin Cava, Scott Katonka, Tom Gazmarski, all of the inventory counters, and all of the data entry clerks for their cooperation and assistance during the audit. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board? Hearing none, we'll let you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the end of the agenda for the committee today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Lori Mizgorski. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Technology Committee for September 19th, 2024. Would committee members please identify themselves?
Jan Liptak.
Okay, and would any other members present please identify themselves?
Tia McClenny.
Tom Bergender.
Stephanie Thurman.
Emma Schuker.
Nick Piscitano.
Okay, thank you. The first thing is the approval of minutes. We did not have a meeting in July, so the June meeting minutes were circulated. And unless anyone has any questions or corrections, I will ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The first proposed resolution will be the awarding of bids. And Mr. Devlin, you have the floor.
Thank you. You're stuck with me twice today. So I have 3 items under our bid resolution this morning. The first one is Panasonic Tough Books. This was solicitation B 2407-65-651. It was publicly advertised and e-business documents were distributed. 553 suppliers notified of the bid opportunity and 6 suppliers accepted the invitation. 5 bids were then received. This is to provide Panasonic Tough Books or approved equals laptops over a 3-month period with no options available. I will note this was for 65 laptops. 2 bidders were found to be non-responsive in accordance with the specifications as advertised. So our recommendation is that a contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Baycom Incorporated, in the estimated amount of $275,470. As there has been no previous purchase of this equipment, staff has determined the pricing to be fair and reasonable, and again, consistent with the funds budgeted. Our second one is contactless smart fare media, in other words, Connect cards. This was solicitation B 240656A, publicly advertised with e-business documents distributed. 340 suppliers were notified and 5 suppliers accepted the invite with 3 bids received. This is to furnish and deliver our contactless smart fare media. As I said, Connect cards, which is used to print and sell our fare instruments. This is for a 2-year period with no renewal options available. Our recommendation is a contract be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Nagels North America, in the estimated amount of $289,625. This pricing does represent a 38% increase over the previous contract for these products, which was 5 years ago. Staff has determined the price to be fair and reasonable and consistent with the funds budgeted. Moment for any questions.
Any questions from committee members?
Thank you. Our final bid item today is for LG Thin clients. We are requesting to purchase this on the CoStar state schedule. Again, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of General Services Cooperative Purchasing Program, CoStars, has awarded a technology hardware contract to AEC Group LLC, and we wish to make a purchase under the terms and conditions of this respective state schedule. The contract number is 003E22531 for IT hardware, estimated amount of $231,023.50. And this is to purchase 600 thin client boxes with warranties and another 5 LG Gram lightweight notebooks, also with warranties, under the terms and conditions. These will be used to replace a current fleet of over 500 10-zig thin clients, which have been in use and are over 6 years old, and as also several mini desktops that are of the same age. This new equipment will be used throughout the agency to continue allowing employees to access their virtual desktops and continue to do their daily work. Subject to any questions, I'd respectfully request that this resolution be taken to the full board for consideration.
Are there any questions from committee members or other board members? Hearing none, may I have a motion to move this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our second is item is a resolution for the authorization to enter into an agreement with Clever Devices Ltd. for pre and post trip vehicle inspections, disruption management licensing for rail and reconfigure, repurpose previously procured IVN 5 replacement units. Mr. Devlin, you're up.
I need you to say that 3 more times fast. Go.
One time.
Yes, thank you. I will note we've had Clever Devices in play on our bus fleet for over 24 years now in various iterations and options with Clever Devices. They recently had their international conference here in town this past week, brought over 135 transit professionals from around the country and Canada to Pittsburgh. They really enjoyed their trip. They got to visit the Incline, Southwest Village Rail Center, as well as sharing other information. So this particular agreement is a great one for us. We're very excited for is what we call pre and post trip inspection. Currently, our drivers, before they get on the bus, they use a piece of paper to do an inspection process to make sure the bus or rail is ready for service. And when they come back to the garage, they fill out what's called a condition card with anything they notice, such as air conditioning, et cetera. This process using Clever Devices allows us to digitize this, essentially paper reduction, which we all like, using existing equipment that's on the bus. It's just another software module with Clever Devices. Additionally, we're adding in some disruption management for the rail system. We activated our detours and out of service disruption management for the bus side some time ago. We're continuing to roll that out as we go, and this module activates that same service on the rail side. And as Lori so eloquently said, we're upgrading some IVN 5 units, which is just some physical devices. So this agreement is for 3 years with a total not to exceed of $546,932. And subject to any questions from the board, I'd respectfully request this resolution be taken to the full board. Thank you.
Any questions from committee members or board members? Hearing none, do I have a motion to advance this to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. This is the end of the agenda for this committee today. I'll say one thing. I believe this is the last committee meeting for today. And so we'll see you next week, Friday, September 27th for our full board meeting. But do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.